Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today at your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio, radio, no pictures live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the victim industry generally, but just as importantly, people who are actually quite privileged, but they desperately want to be victims. I want to be a victim, please, victim. And through that, they acquire, as they would see it at least, some sort of supernatural moral power that comes from victim power. So the two are, so they are in a morally impregnable position. They can accuse everyone else of being a Nazi, if not Hitler personally, but they are immune from all claims because they have this supposed moral superiority, which comes from being a victim, and this thing, the lived experience, and all that sort of ideological nonsense that goes around. So I just want to focus on one example of this, someone who is very privileged, quite well off, and who is desperately, I mean, as in, will dive into the gutter to be able to portray themselves and cloak themselves in this victimhood. Now, their story just didn't ring true to me, and we know them through sort of other people, but and they happen to be at the same sort of places, some lunches and dinners and barbecues, or that sort of stuff, and they happen to be there. But well, this particular woman happened to be there. Now, she's white and Christian, but she claims that she suffered when she came to Australia as a young person, as a kid with her folks who came from Eastern Europe. And she claims that she suffered unspeakable racism here by evil white Anglo-Australians. Now, she's white and Christian, indistinguishable from anyone else, so I'm not sure what racism she refers to, but she insists nonetheless that she is victim, not just of racism, but the most terrible racism, evil fascist Nazi racism, and that just is impossible. But she then claims that she because she was foreign and this sort of thing, that she was treated differently and singled out for humiliation and bullying in class, all these sorts of things, and at school and so on, that she was discriminated against in employment. And because she had a non-Anglo-Saxon name, she claims that she was discriminated against because she just didn't have a name like Smith or Jones or something like that. So, and claims that she suffered endlessly and suffers to this very day, and so on and so forth. Now, none of that is believable, but just listening to it, that her continually wanting to revel in this so-called victimhood and claim that because she's a victim, she is thus morally superior, and then by extension, everyone else is morally inferior. And she just goes along with the leftist stuff, Trump bad, and she listens to MSNBC and gets off on that everyone's a Nazi and so on. So anyway, I did a little bit of sort of, and it only took me a few minutes to actually get this. She was actually born in Australia, so this idea that she came to Australia as a child and suffered racism is nonsense. She was born in Australia, and the rest of her family, where she claims that another sibling was born in Australia, and another sibling was 2 years old or something when they came to Australia. So this idea they suffered racism, all white Christians, again, all indistinguished from everybody else, but they all revel in this victimhood, her in particular, I think, but nonetheless. Now, I suppose there are a few things that we're thinking about. her folks didn't go to English classes. They only spoke, I think it was Polish actually, or something like that. They only spoke Polish in the house, and they didn't go to preschool or kindy or anything like that, which is all free at the time, by the way. They started primary school, when they were 5 years old, and they couldn't really speak any English, and they were offered the opportunity to reduce the name to being, their surname, instead of being 5 syllables, reducing it to 2 syllables, or some sort of soft anglicizing and this sort of thing. But this was refused. They hung around with other Polish people, and moved into a neighborhood where there were quite a few Polish people, which didn't have to. So the parents refused to attend the free English language classes that were available at the time. So the parents made no effort to integrate or to be part of the local society or anything like that. And again, it would have been tough on the kids starting school at 5 years old, not really being able to speak English, and coming from sort of a very East European rural area sort of Polish way of life, which the parents sort of stuck to, including and they'd go to school with their Polish sausage and this sort of stuff, so they'd have stood out as different. Now, she sees that. Did her parents prepare them for, any parent, you would think, any parents would think, oh, gee, they've got to go to a school where English is taught. We've got to really make an effort here to get the kids ready to go to school, because if they go to school not being able to speak English, or speak it rather poorly, then it's going to be harder on them. So we need to, and so we should attend night classes in English, so we speak some English in the house rather than just speaking Polish. And so the parents made no effort to prepare. Now she says, well, the problem wasn't my parents not preparing me. The problem was all those damn fucking racists. Well, they weren't being racist. There was no racism. You're white and you're Christian, so there's no racism. Don't give me that. The problem you encountered was you started school not being able to speak English either at all or not very well. That was the issue here. And so don't try and turn that into that it was a racist issue. It wasn't. And given that your parents wouldn't speak English in the house, this just made it harder for you there was no English books in the house. You couldn't read in English. And so other than being sort of forced to really through the school system, so your English learning, your learning in class was much slower. So she was being put in the bottom classes, not because she was necessarily a moron. I don't think she is, but because her English was so poor, her comprehension was poor, and thus she couldn't follow the lessons. So she was flunking the tests, and therefore they were putting her in the bottom classes, as they did in those days. And she then says, well, that's racism. I was being oppressed and so on. No, it wasn't. It just meant you couldn't comprehend what was happening in class. And so because you weren't succeeding in the tests and in class, they put you in the bottom class, where the education system would move much more slowly, which would allow you, if you applied yourself, to catch up, which eventually she did, by the way. So all credit to her there. But she remembers every barb, every insult, every put down, every being sneered or sniggered at. She remembers all of that, and she treats it like it was all a dagger. Even today, it's an evil dagger to the heart. She's been unsuccessful in romantic relationships, but she's been the mistress to quite wealthy men. She's not. I wouldn't have thought she was good looking enough to be mistress material. But hey, what do I know? She's not bad, I suppose. I mean, there's something kind of sexy about her in a way, but anyway, she or would have been when she was younger. So she ended up doing quite well out of being a paid up mistress and guys with power and connections and that could fix her up with good jobs and give her well paid jobs that she wouldn't have earned in the real world. And one guy even sort of gave her an apartment effectively in return for her mistress duties, but she still insists that she's a victim. She's put upon, she's suffered. Racists are everywhere, oppressors are everywhere, and she just revels in this victimhood, and she just won't let it go. And lives in a nice house and doesn't have any mortgage or things to worry about. Has by all measures a very good quality of life, but again perceives that she's surrounded by oppression and so on, that she's a victim, and she simply won't let it go. Even though now, I don't know why. Well, I do actually. I see that edge of bitterness that she just cannot let go. And again, she needs it. It's her identity. I'm a victim. That's my identity, and I think that's part of why she hasn't had a successful relationship. She's had sort of relationships. They seem to be very, very short, very brief, or alternatively, they're purely sexual. So, there's something about the way she seems to enjoy debasing herself sexually. I don't quite understand it, but I think it's all part of the the victim narrative that she wants to build around herself. But the bottom line is she is no victim. She's never been a victim. I mean, you could say it would have been difficult when she started school, but to blame the school kids, she needs to say to her, be realistic about this. Your parents could have done way more to prepare you for school, that they did nothing to prepare you for school. It shows that they were remiss in it wasn't the kids that at school, or the teachers at school that treated you differently. You couldn't fucking speak the language. Also, not why can't I take Polish food to school, like Polish sausage and Polish pickled foods and things like that. Why can't I take? Why should I not? No, you can take that. You can take it to school, but you also need to understand it makes you stand out. And if you stand out, you'll then be subject to some sort of ridicule, or at least additional attention. So if you don't want the attention, then don't do things that attract the attention. This is very, very simple here. She takes the opposite. I can behave as differently as I want, and I can be as in your face different as I want. And if anyone treats me differently, then they're fucking Hitler. So, and you see this around with a lot of people, particularly women, but not only women. But anyone in the victim industry, they just have this desire, need, a maniacal need to be a victim. And this woman has fabricated really an entire sort of bio around being a victim, and where it's not outright invention, it's a ridiculous interpretation of past events, but everything that her whole life she has just rearranged it to suit a pure victim narrative, which she then revels in and then uses as a cloak to say, well, I must be morally superior to all you people. And I tried to point out the flaws in some of her arguments, but she views it, you're just like those kids at school. You're just being racist. You're being Hitler to me, and you're wasting your time talking about it. But there are a lot of women, particularly in the activism and the judiciary now, and in all areas, public service, people with that sort of victim mentality flock to the public service, and a lot of these people are in key roles, diversity officers, human resource officers, all this sort of thing, and they're busily destroying a society that they imagine exists but doesn't, for victimhood that they and past slights and hurts that they never received. You've been with Tassus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for listening.